I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have my special guest, Amanda Berning, with us to talk about how to hit seven figures as a recruiter. She's done it multiple years in a row, and she has got a wealth of knowledge about what you need to do as a recruiter, the things that you need to do, the habits, the work ethic, and the mindset. So, Amanda, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. So welcome.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for having me. And I appreciate my colleague Lisa introducing me to your podcast. I've loved listening to it so far. So it's my pleasure.
Awesome. So real quick, let's go ahead and get started. It's a question I ask everybody. How did you end up in the wonderful world of recruiting?
Yeah, everyone's story is usually pretty interesting. It's not like I set out to do that. So actually, I had been working in like restaurants for several years. That's what I went to school for and everything. And I started to feel that if there was something I could use my skill set in that wouldn't require me to work every weekend and holiday, that I would like to raise my hand for that job. So I reached out to my network, as you naturally do, and a friend of a friend said this recruiting firm they work at is looking for an admin. And I asked if it worked weekends, and they said no. And I said, I would absolutely love to interview. So it ended up being interesting. So I applied for this admin role, and they give me the DISC profile, like a version of it. And it came back as like, we wouldn't necessarily recommend you hire Amanda as an admin. However, we believe that she has some strong potential to be a recruiter. So the president of the company like relays this to me, and he's like, so would you be interested in a recruiter job here? And I said, no, I don't think I want to call people on the phone. And so he goes, okay, well, I'm going to hire you as an admin, but like, let's keep an open mind. So within 10 months, once I started understanding what people are actually doing and how much money could be made, I said, give me a phone, and I never looked back. So
that's exciting. So right now, Korn Ferry, I know you're with the Lucas Group, and Lucas Group was purchased by Korn Ferry. You're primarily focused on HR professionals. How did you find that niche for yourself?
Yeah, good question. So I had worked at a firm in other industries early on in my career. I decided about 4 years in, I think I want to go to in-house. I did that, and maybe I'm crazy, but I missed the pace. I missed the entrepreneurial nature, and I think I missed a lot of money. So I ended up kind of like being open-minded to it. I sent my resume out there, and actually a member of my current team, Jen Sorensen, saw my resume, was thinking of it maybe for clients. We talked, and she's like, how would you like to work at our company? We're hiring someone specifically for human resources recruiting. And culturally, I just really liked the people I met, and it didn't really matter to me what I was recruiting for. I'd never been specialized only in human resources before, but a lot of the work that I had done in-house in my corporate job did include human resources positions. So I knew it. I sat with those people, and I said, yeah, sure, sign me up. And I've really enjoyed it since. So
I got to ask, because I know I went from agency to internal, then down to my own firm. I remember it was just such a wake-up call from going agency to internal. How was that for you?
Agency to internal, I remember it vividly well when my first deal happened in internal. I remember going, it was like they had me as an exec search like level, like the high level roles internal. And I was excited. There's this global role. I think it was like a head of legal in Singapore or something. And I said, all right, I found the candidate. Let's go to offer. I'm like, I'm going to call him right now and give him the offer. And like the person that was like kind of supervising me was like, sit down. We have to go to HR, and then we have to go to compensation, and then we have to go to, and I was like, what? And they're like, it's going to be like another week or so. So you need to hold your horses a little bit. And so I kind of got like, used to that pace, but also I think it's given me the appreciation once I came back to an agency, like, you can't be like so mad at these corporate people because like they're doing their job and there's other people they have to interact with. So anyway, that was my initial like memory of the kind of the difference there.
I definitely had to ask because I remember I went from aerotech recruiting to internal at a large defense contractor, and it's go at aerotech.
Yeah,
slam the racks, slam the people, get people hired, and then like I remember that large defense contractor like, once the application was in and we had all the approvals and we all sat in a room and they'd go through our applications on a big screen. And at the end, if everything was, all the I's were crossed and all the, T's were whatever, they would stamp it approved. And then you could take it over to HR to go get the offer out. But if you didn't get, if you missed one thing, 6.5 years of experience versus a 7, it got a big stamp of denied, and you'd have to go back and then come back in the meeting the next day. So I remember the craziness of that.
Oh yeah. And I felt there was more, there's paperwork on both sides. There's administrative stuff to be done on both sides, but at least the company I was at, a lot of packaging, so I do have an appreciation for what they do. They're both hard jobs if you do them well. They're just different. So
awesome. So want to go ahead and just jump right in.
Sure.
What kind of work does it take to become a 7-figure biller?
A lot. I did it the first year I hit the 7 million mark was my third year back at an agency. Or no. Okay. It was kind of my 2.5 year. So my first year I didn't, and then it was I did, and then I did again. So it was fast, and especially I think if you come into a firm and want to do that quickly, you have to be willing to put in some hours and a lot of planning, because I run a full desk, and it's in a territory, historically it's been in a territory where we just aren't we hadn't been that known in Lucas Group, but obviously Korn Ferry now, they're quite known. But so we had to, hunt what we could, brand ourselves and then place it. So almost every day, we used to have the call charts. I was number one, almost every single day. And I knew you're probably going to be the first one into the office and you're going to be the one that locks it up. And I have very vivid memories when we were in the office every day of just coming out of the elevator, unlocking the doors, turning all the lights on, and then the same day, almost every day, being the same person to do that. So I think that attitude, it's it's going to take a lot of work if I want to accomplish this, and being okay with it is huge. I believe the other kind of key pieces were looking at your mistake, really analyzing, yes, things go right, and what can you take from that? But if they don't, really being willing to process what went wrong, or what can I do better? And in a lot of cases, asking for the feedback and being open to it, because the quicker, if you're defensive, and I kind of was my first couple years of my career, I was early 20s. Once you kind of let that down and you're no, this is just to make me better and get me to those better numbers, it really helps you get there. So I think those are the big pieces. I'm extremely responsive. I think my clients can say this. And my goal is not to be their best friend, although it's great if they like me. I like to be liked, but to be a consultative partner. So I will, when I see things in their process that aren't correct, or you have 18 people on this panel, maybe for the plan HR manager, that's a little too many people. And I will tactfully in conversations give them feedback, maybe we should have you considered maybe doing this, and having these set questions and maybe less people. I'll give them the feedback on what I'm seeing in the market. If they come to me and say, oh, we have this job, it pays this. Knowing the space as well as I do, I'll say, look, this is very much below market. I'm going to be honest, this is what you might want to consider, or I can do this, but would you be open to someone stepping into the role? So I'm a lot of touch points with my clients. Almost all of them, I have a standing once a week, if we're not already talking more than that. And I'm, educating them on what I'm seeing. I'm very, very consultative, and I'm not afraid to have the tough conversations on either side. And I'm always on the candidate side, closing things as early as possible. Today I had somebody interview, it was a first round interview, and they'll probably have several more if it keeps going. But they said to me, I was debriefing, and then I started asking the hard questions. Okay, this is remote. You're not remote now, right? Okay, when you give your notice for this offer, let's say it occurs down the stream, what is going to happen when your company counteroffers you and said, now you can work remote magically? Are we done here? And she's like, oh, I don't think that'll happen. I said, no, it will. Eventually go there. It will happen. And I want to know what you're going to do. And if it's like, I got to think about it, that's honest. But the next conversation, we're going to talk about this again. And the same thing with like counter offers. And so I try to keep things as tight and in control as I can, and bring up like some of that awkward stuff that like you might hear, but you don't want to know. But it also allows you to, you know, have more control over what's going to close. It allows you to decide like if I need to spend more time, like getting additional backups. And then I think the other thing for me is, and a lot of my clients would probably say this, my speed of delivery, very fast. And one of the benefits of being specialized in just human resources or just something, you know, very niche is you build that inventory and you know the people in your network. So depending on the search, and I'll be honest, if it's super niche, I might give them a longer timeline, but you know, your regular kind of HR manager, director, VP searches, I may have candidates to them in 48 hours. And so they're not used to always that delivery speed. And I think that they like that. So I have very loyal clients. I think last year it was predominantly 10 or so clients that just came back. And they also were like, are there Amandas that do this for finance? Are there Amandas that do this for operations? And there are. So I would connect them with my colleagues, but I would always check in and say, if you're not getting the service you need from my colleagues, no, you can tell me, and like I can make changes. So a lot of just, I don't know, I always treat a client with the attitude that if they're going to another firm after working with me, I have failed at my job. Like, unless it's something I don't specialize in and the Korn Ferry doesn't do, and I have told them Korn Ferry doesn't do this. Like, if they're not coming to me for all their business needs externally, then I failed. And what can I take from that? So I don't say it, I take it literally. And that I think is what's gotten me to the 7 figures.
I got a few questions on this.
Sure.
And one of them that you mentioned was, you know, one of your current clients that you're filling multiple positions with them for, they come to you for a finance rec. You don't take that position, do you?
No, no, I don't. But I will always say, when in doubt, if you don't know if we do it, ask me, and I will tell you very yes or no, or I don't know. Let me get back to you, and I'll get back to you quickly. But what I will do, and our company has allowed us to do, is handpick who's best to refer that business to. So I build a lot of internal relationships, and that's a lot of the work I'm going to continue to do in 2023 in the bigger Korn Ferry, because they're much larger than Lucas Group was. But when we were Lucas Group at 350, 400 people, I knew a good majority of them. I would just get on the phone, get to know them on trips. And when those situations came up, someone would come into my head and be like, that's what they do. Like that, their personalities are going to match. Let's get them connected.
Awesome.
So every year I make of revenue just from splits, I get at least 100,000 or more from flips to people.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was asking is just because, a lot of people like, solo recruiters or, you're trying to get as much business as you can. Like if you're calling yourself an HR specialist and then you're going and filling finance and all this stuff. Like,
no, you're too broad.
That would probably take away from like what you're doing, right?
100%. Yeah. Too broad.
Awesome. And then you mentioned that like your call volume's high. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't say it's off the charts anymore because I am having longer live conversations and everything. But on average, I aim to have 25 plus calls every day. And I hold myself very like honest to that. So like, what are you doing with that time? Like, is it productive? And I know like what it looks like to have $1 million desk. So typically I need to have out minimally 10 candidates interviewing at a time. I need to have, probably 5 minimally, but ideally closer to 10 plus jobs open at a time. And if you don't have that, then you're not tracking at that pace probably. But yeah, I think about that. I'm on the phone live calls probably a little over 2 hours a day, some days more. I don't know. Just
about every big biller that I made talks about call volume.
Yeah. But when I was new, like if you're new and you want to get to the $1 million threshold, if you can get like 50 in, like that's a better strategy. I definitely erred on 30 is a minimum when I was in my first couple years. Because I had nothing like people to call me back. I was just branding myself. So you have control over some things when you're new, not a lot, but some, and work ethic, planning, and execution are all things you can control. So, that's why I always did what I could there.
Well, that flips into the next question. You might have just answered it. What advice would you give to a brand new recruiter?
I would say definitely be planned. Like, know who you're not going to call, because if you can go down a list, you're going to get out 30 calls pretty quickly because you're already organized. You have it in the system. Like, you got a plan for the day and pre-schedule things. I still do that. Like, you don't, just because someone picks up the phone and they're like, yeah, I want to talk to you, you don't have to dive into it right now. You can confirm that for tomorrow, or like, again, it depends on the urgency of the role, but like, most days I have 5 or 6 scheduled appointments I'm walking into. And then with the other time, I have a plan of who I'm going to try to prospect from a sales side and what I'm going to do at that time. So I'm not like thinking, you lose a couple minutes here and there thinking about things when you're not planned. So live and die by plans and goals. And be like realistic of what those need to look like. The other thing I would say, and I got this advice from Sean Walker, first firm I worked at, Bowdoin, unfortunately no longer with us, but one of the greatest salespeople in the industry. Like, I still believe to this day, I'm sure a lot of people know him. And he said to me one day when I was probably 24 years old, Amanda, like, you used to be a bartender. You just be the bartender on the phone. Like, just because I would get like nervous and like what the people in the cube thought I was like saying, if I was saying it right. Like, I wasn't as confident in myself. And so I just like would get all this nervous energy on the phone, and it wasn't making me come off confident. So he was just like, think about when you were a bartender and like channel that, like kind of be your genuine self and just like let down that nervousness. And I really digested that, and to this day I think that's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. So
awesome. And so there's plenty of us recruiters that have been around the block for a while, whether internal, external. What advice would you give to an experienced recruiter that wants to get better?
That's a very good question. I would say seek out areas of opportunity for you. So one of my 7-figure years, I was at the top of the charts of the company. I had been, but I knew like preps were like awkward for me. Like, I just felt like sort of awkward. I don't know if the people felt awkward when I was talking to them, but I just like, it wasn't my favorite thing. And I knew it. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get better at this. So I actually ended up calling a couple of the divisional leads and just asking them, like, who on your team, I don't care where they sit, what state, like, has the prep thing down and like really you think changes the game and the way these candidates interview. And so I got a couple recommendations. One of the guys I ended up shadowing, and I didn't care because he's better at that piece than I was, even though I was one on the charts, right? So I was able to, learn from a couple people and up my game and my confidence in this niche area. So you have to just continuously want to push yourself and fine tune yourself a little bit more. Even today, I had a call with my boss, and we talked about kind of the sales approach now being part of Korn Ferry and everything. And my strategy to have more, like to go upstream a little bit more, to have maybe target more of your 1 billion plus players and add a bit more of that to my portfolio. And again, I could do the same thing over and over, but I would never get better. So you have to like kind of test yourself and like really seek out the performance enhancing feedback if you're not naturally getting it, I guess.
So that's definitely great advice. And there's areas that like I know we're all scared of,
yeah.
And there's people that like have done it better. I remember, myself years ago, I just started calling up other recruiters at Aerotech. I was like, "Hey, you're top of the charts. What can I learn from you?"
Yeah, yeah. But even if they're not like. There are solid producers that maybe even they're ranked maybe a little below you, but they're doing they're more confident in one of the many areas in the hats we wear. So I always look at that. Now when I'm in Corn Ferry, there's a lot more opportunity because we just do more and there's more people. So I'm trying to like find out who some of these people are I can learn from, and do that more. But you know, the sky's the limit. And again, if you're at like a firm of 5 people and you're like, nope, I think I've tapped out my knowledge, like call the best recruiter you know. Like, I don't think I would be mad if another recruiter called me and was like, at your convenience, not like tomorrow around my schedule, like, could you share with me like 5 pointers? Like, sure, like that's super nice. Like, I'm flattered, you know? It's all about the approach, but you can always find people to learn from, so.
And there's an incredible recruiting community out there. Like,
yeah.
You know, like you reached out to me. I've had a conversation with like your friend Lisa and multiple other people. And the one thing I've noticed about a lot of high performers, like they want to be able to share because they want the entire community to be lifted up.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Awesome. So here's a question that I ask everybody. And looking at your career now, looking at the success you've had, the things that you've learned, if you can go back to yourself early in your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I thought about this a lot because I knew you were going to ask it. Honestly, I think I would have just told myself, like, you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to be good at this. Like, don't be scared. Because especially first year, I'd say on the phone, I doubted myself a little bit. I was intimidated by some of the longevity and success of people in the room. And I thought, you know, I can only do maybe up to certain levels of jobs because, you know, I'm new and once you kind of let go of that and you're like more confident, like you're gonna make it. And I'm naturally an anxious person, but looking back at just life in general, I wish I would worry less and just do more, you know, like just take away the energy where you were nervous and just give it your all. And you're going to fail like at some times, but like, it's going to make you better. So that's what I would say.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that talking about planning and how important planning has been to your success.
Yeah.
You know, for recruiters out there, like how do you plan your day and how do you plan kind of like who you're calling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So again, I run a full desk, pretty 50-50 actually, in between sales and new business prospecting and recruiting. So I will get on the best planned days, I will know who I'm calling for business, and I will have like their name, their contact information, and then a time frame that I'm hoping, you know, I'm aiming to get this done. And then I will have, you know, another 2 to 3 jobs I'm going to work that day and exactly who I'm calling. So I will have done the research, you know, through a combination of looking at the right profiles on LinkedIn, our database and everything. I'll either have them already uploaded in our system or while the call is going on. And then I also try to have goals, like, and reward myself. So for example, if I want to start my day by business development and I have usually I have an overplanned amount because whatever, if you have more time and someone doesn't pick up the phone, do more. If I get I start calling and 2 people pick up and we're getting live calls, yeah, we might want to, sign a contract or something. If I get a job order and I'm excited I have the option then to be okay, you achieved that goal. You got a job order today. You can now move on to the next area on your agenda if you'd like, and then I would, I could pivot there. And on the candidate side, my goal is to have, whatever it is, 1 to 2 of these people I'm calling are going to be interested, qualified, and we're going to have them as send outs. And then you move on to the next goal, and you can either stop your day there or you can make your goal higher and do better. And I think that's when I've done the best, and I've been that type of planned. And there's also a lot of things that change quickly, especially the business I'm in is retain, contain, and contingent. So if you look at the contingent aspect of things, especially on those jobs, speed is everything. So you must be willing to pivot and replan. So I usually go into each week having a set plan for at least the first half of the week. But things change. So I, unfortunately, will have to scrap some of that. Maybe a new, hotter job comes in. I want to be the first to talk to the people. Then that night before, you're going to plan again. So it's a lot of discipline. And it's something that I think a lot of times people choose to cut out of their day because they think it's going to save time. But that's a mistake. I really think that's a mistake. So that's how I go about it.
And how much time do you think per day do you spend planning and researching?
Gosh, well, I'm kind of a nerd. I would say I probably check the jobs market and LinkedIn like every day, but I like joke. I'm like, well, you're sitting at the bus stop. Like, I don't take a bus anywhere. I don't know like specifically why I use that example, but like while you're doing laundry, like like between things, I always want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on, what's coming in the last 24 hours in Ohio where I sit. On the planning side for sales, it does, I like to put a lot of mindset into a lot of strategic planning into it. So it takes me, I like to do it on Sundays and probably 4 or 5 hours. And sometimes I go down a rabbit hole and I'll like over plan and I might spend more than that. But again, that may cover me for several days. On the recruitment side, I've gotten faster and faster over time, but I would say on average, like an hour a day.
Okay, awesome. No, that's definitely great. And I think that's one thing that a lot of recruiters don't spend enough time on, and I'll throw my hand up there myself, is planning out how my week needs to be and planning out who I'm going to be reaching out to. Yeah. Many times we just go into firefighter mode.
Yeah, it's easy to. And I mean, I can't say I do it 100% of every single day of every single week, but when I'm on my best runs, like the month before, I look back and I say, wow, it's planned that month. And that's why I'm making a ton of money this next month or, what have you. So.
Awesome. Is there a favorite quote that has had an impact in your career?
I have a lot of Brené Brown quotes in my office. I've read, I think, probably all of her books. And I guess that's both for like work related and other, but I actually went to one of the LinkedIn conferences years back and I had never heard of her because I don't know. And I was kind of like sitting near the back and like, oh, there's a lot of speakers, like this is exciting. And I just like put down my phone and was like, this woman is super, super impressive. I want to sign up for everything she's saying. So I have multiple quotes from her throughout my office. And then I also have like good to great quotes. So I'm trying to think like, get the good to great one that kind of, I might be butchering this a little bit, but like getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, I think is critical. And I've seen that come up so many times, like colleagues or just candidates I'm talking to where I'm like, I'll start a conversation with them, maybe with a role in mind, and I'll like have this realization, like this might not be right, but it's all about like sorting them to the right seat. So I don't know. I think that those are kind of the two like authors and, where I would say I relate the most.
Okay. And definitely a great quote. And book-wise, it's the same question. Is there a book that has had a huge impact in your career?
Brené Brown's like I Am the Wilderness and like her different books, all of them have had a massive impact on my career and life and just attitude, being a strong woman, being able to be resilient. I think resiliency we found, especially in 2020 as a company, was a unanimous trend across our top producers. Like it was just like everyday type of thing. I had a week I referred to last year where I lost over $100,000 in deals. It wasn't a single deal, but it was like the snowball was going down. And it was the first time I had hit that 7 million mark and our CEO announced it. And then I was like, I can't be that person that everybody thinks did this and then doesn't. So I just, instead of being like sad, I was just like, you're going to have to like turn it into next year and you're going to have to get $100,000 back on the board before anyone notices. And I did it. But I think that, that's resilience is just key.
And here's kind of going into, you talking about 2020 where everything just went sideways in the economy for a little while. What advice would you give to recruiters out there to prepare for a potential downturn in the economy?
Yeah, it's tough mentally. I think it's every day, like just working on what you can control and putting in the effort. and learning like what's effective. Like, are you spotting a trend where like you are seeing slight movement? Okay, let's explore that more. But it's harder, and I think you need to mentally prepare for that. And for me, I think the last 3 years, every year I've outdone myself, and I'm even in a place right now where like, can you in this market outdo next year? I'm not sure, but maybe being okay with that if you are still building these relationships, you have those repeat clients that will not go anywhere else. And that would be probably my best advice.
Okay, awesome. Now, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners of the podcast?
I just think I said this, let me grab it from this is like our top producer thing. You got Lisa on here too. But I said this in, I think, my speech when I was the top producer that year. And it was like my own quote, but I think it says, taking the losses and hits on the chin. Everybody in this business has them. And the higher number, the more statistically you're running into that. Take away the learning lessons from that and let yourself not fall victim to excuses. I just think that's it. Like, it's not these people build this much because they were lucky. No, they just like got over it faster and like just like took that energy and like harnessed it and was like, we're going to just learn and we're going to like put more work in to turn the situation around. So I think I'm one that's not very patient with people making excuses or lack of effort. Like, those are two things, mindset and effort, you can always control. And if you envision that you want something, you can get there. And also the first year I hit 7 figures, mentally, I had set my goal, I think, at 400,000 that year. But what I did is when I hit 400,000, I said, all right, let me try for 700, which is random. But I was like, so I got to 700. And then I was like, well, it'd be really hard to get to 1 million, but like, I'm going to reset my goal right now to 1 million. And then I did. And then I ended up, beyond hundreds of thousands of dollars beyond 1 million, because I was willing to not be complacent with what it was like, I didn't believe I could do that well. I exceeded it. Okay, reset, exceed. So that's all I'd probably point out. Awesome.
Well, definitely. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on the podcast. Definitely super excited about sharing this episode with the listeners. It's just, there are so many great people like yourself that, including myself, taking notes and learning from and, working on how to be a better recruiter myself. So definitely thank you for the feedback, the advice, and what you've shared with the listeners.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.